So welcome everyone. I'm excited to introduce you to the 2022 inductees of the Cleveland Heights High School Distinguished Alumni Hall of Fame. Welcome and thank you for gathering with us for our informal after show discussion. With me this evening are Steve Haney, our Vice President of the Heights Schools Foundation from the class of 1991. Also, Megan McMahon, our treasurer from the class of 1990, and Wesley Williams, our Development and Marketing Associate from the class of 2012. I'm Deanna Bremer Fisher. I'm the proud parent of a Heights High School junior, wow, and also the interim administrator for the Heights Schools Foundation as we search for our executive director. It is my honor to be one of the hosts of this year's Distinguished Alumni Hall of Fame and of this informal conversation with this year's inductees. During the pandemic, we were challenged to come up with innovative ways to connect with our alumni and students, and we hosted the first informal online conversation with our Hall of Fame inductees in 2020. This was so well received, and it enabled us to connect in a very personal way with our inductees and enabled you to share experiences that of your remembrance of Heights and how that shaped you and helped you in your future careers. And so we're very pleased to be carrying on that tradition by doing tonight's after show. You might remember that Patricia Ackerman created the Distinguished Alumni Hall of Fame 42 years ago. And she did it in her words to bring life-sized role models directly to today's students, to give them real life examples of what they too can accomplish. And true to the program's original values, it is current students who select those who will be inducted into the Hall of Fame. This year, we worked with Dr. Carmen Daniel and her amazing Gear Up students at Heights High. They carefully weighed your qualifications and chose you from a long list of highly accomplished applicants. Not only because of your incredible achievements, but because your story spoke to them. So tonight, we want to thank Dr. Daniel and her students, and we want to congratulate all of you for being selected to become part of this esteemed group. Congratulations to all of you. And I know that we're eager to hear your stories, and we have about a half an hour for our discussion tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to my co-hosts, starting with Steve Haney.
Okay, and just to echo congratulations again. You know, when I was first nominated for the Hall of Fame, oh, my wife said I was never nominated. That's okay, because that was just all in my head. I'm going to go ahead and ask a question, and then you can just kind of go round robin. So I'll go ahead and start. If you could go back to your high school years, what is the best piece of advice you would give to your younger self? And the floor is open. Anybody can jump in.
I guess I'll start. I would say to myself that one person can make a difference. That, you know, if you see something in your neighborhood or in your community or in the world that, you know, through your experience you think could be made different or better, that you can make a difference. You can absolutely, as a person, address those issues and make things better for yourself and for others.
I'll jump in. I'm totally with you that each one of us alone can make a difference in this world. And I would add to that, to be curious. I think sometimes in high school, you walk into that big building as a sophomore and it could be a little daunting. And especially with all the changes of adolescence and so forth. But to be curious and to wonder about this world, to wonder about others, that especially people and things that are different from you.
Yeah, I'll say something similar to that. One of the things I think about is being open to experiences and realizing, and I look back on that, little things who seemed inconsequential at the time became very important without realizing it to my career as I progressed.
I would add to that, maybe I wouldn't say to myself, don't write linear like it appears to be when you're younger, that you have to go from A to B to rather, if you absorb what's around you, you can actually change this path that maybe someone lays out in front of you as completely along that. And that's good. So you don't have to worry that if you don't hit one, that everything's over.
I would agree also, and I feel the same way. I noticed that opportunities came up, and I didn't see them at the time, but these little bitty opportunities, to get up and speak in front of people or to be a leader in different situations. At the time, you're kind of a little scared, but those things are what form the path that you're going to take, and you just kind of got to be open to wherever the path is going to take you.
I love all these sentiments, and I would also add that I think we can all make a difference. And if there are skills that you feel like you don't have, if you're curious, I think you can develop all those skills. You don't need to have them finished in high school or in college or at any point. You can do what you want to do if you set your own mind to a particular path and be open to that path changing, of course.
I'll echo that point on experiences. The value of experiences, the value of trying something new, of not being afraid to do something that seems really hard, even if you aren't good at it right then. It's something I still probably struggle with, but I think that's something that's been really helpful for me.
Okay, I would say, I agree with all that. And it's kind of circling around this contemporary issue. People talk about resilience, because of climate change. Well, people can be resilient too, and that means to be relentless pursuit of things that you're interested in, your curiosities, whatever. And, it's been said before that when a door closes in front of you, there's disappointment and sadness, and you could shut down. But what happens in my life, I've seen it many times, is a door closes here and another one opens there. And so you can't be shut down because one door closed, you got rejected by something, somebody, was mean to you or whatever, because right around the corner is another something that might be a bigger opportunity and a better situation than you had imagined. So just keep going.
My advice to my younger self would be to receive those messages of affirmation from the teachers that are pouring into you, from your mother. Believe her, know that you have an inner wisdom, tap into that, be accepting of that, resist the many, many messages that you are not enough in all the ways that there are messages telling you you are not enough. Know that those are lies, and look for those people who will help you know and understand and experience yourself as capable and full of potential.
Thank you. Thank you all for your answers. So I'll pass it on to Megan.
Oh yeah, I love this part just because I like to hear all, and I totally get into. I'm like, wait, what should I tell? Listen, what are they doing now? But this is my favorite question, just because I'm super nostalgic for Heights High and everything of high school. So this is, what is your favorite memory or experience at Heights? It could be a class, a sport, a teacher that changed your life. We'll keep it positive, and no, it's a family show because there's a lot that went on in high school. It could be funny or something that just sticks with you.
I could say in 10th grade, this was 1985, 86 year, but I think it was in the spring of 86. Myself, a buddy, Mark Oden, and Sean Riley, we entered the Heights talent show. And we dressed up like Prince in the Revolution, and we reenacted Prince's concert. And we ended up, actually, we were all in 10th grade. We ended up winning the talent show that year.
Wow.
Like $300.
Sweet. That's cool.
So that was exciting in the sense that, you know, going on stage and performing in front of a huge crowd. And it was just like, it was like a real concert, people yelling and screaming, and it was crazy, but it was like, the positive feedback from it just kind of pumps you up to want to do it again. And
so I had a chemistry professor or teacher called Dr. Williams, who was not the most warm and fuzzy of teachers. He was very serious, but he was an excellent teacher, and he commanded respect. You definitely knew that he wasn't messing around, but he was also funny. When we're learning chemistry and we had labs and we learned about the periodic table of all the elements, and so anyway, we learned from him a backstory. So he had another teacher who had been a very good friend of his who taught at Heights, named Mr. Galley, and Mr. Galley then became an administrator, but apparently they had a falling out at some point, so that anytime we were talking about the periodic table, the elements, if anybody would mention the element called gallium, we would be scolded by Dr. Williams. And so I just, that just came back as a funny memory.
That's really funny, and so funny that he did that in front of all you guys. I love it. Who else?
In my class, oh, go ahead.
I have two. One's very quick, which is that I saw LeBron James play in high school, which was pretty cool. And the other one, a little bit of a story, is I had a 10th grade math teacher named Mr. Muthersbaugh, who also was very funny and witty and far more engaging than many of my other math teachers. And on March 14th, he always celebrated Pi Day. And it was the first time I'd ever heard of Pi Day. And so he had literally everybody bring in pies. And we didn't have class that day. We just ate pie. And you could memorize pi out to as many digits as possible and get extra credit for however many digits you could memorize. So just people went up in front of the class and tried to recite as many digits of pi as possible while we ate pie. And I don't think I'll ever forget that. And I still celebrate Pi Day.
That's cool.
That makes me think about a memory. I think that Heights has always been ahead of its time. And I graduated high school in 1971. We were talking a little bit about the decades and what decade is the most difficult or was the most difficult, and how does it compare to these difficult times that we all find ourselves in. 70s were tough, and things changed, and were changing very, very quickly in Heights. That's a longer story. But I was always interested in education and psychology, and I had finished all of my credits by the beginning of senior year. And I can't remember the details of this now, but I spent most of my senior year teaching a half a day in my first grade classroom alongside my first grade teacher, Ms. Gustin. And now that's common. I'm sure it's very common to those of you of high school students now, but it was something that really was unheard of. And so when you talk about the innovation of Pi Day, like my kids did Pi Day, that it's pretty common now, but doing some of these things, during those times was, really an incredible opportunity.
I was also bring a couple different scenes from Heights. One was when we were in Dr. Rubinsky's class, and we were reading Moby Dick, which I was having a really hard time getting into. I tried, but I wasn't into it. And she wanted us to do a large scale project on a whale, and people writing book reports and doing a lot of reading. And I just decided that I would convince the whole class to adopt a whale. And so we went through, I don't know what it was, Greenpeace or one of these organizations. And I just love that she supported that endeavor, such a wacky idea and maybe not kosher while other people were busy writing and reading. But that really impressed me that she was open to such unusual ideas. And I really loved her for that. And I was also going to just mention Dr. Mayer, who was the orchestra teacher, who I think really inspired such an amazing culture of working towards your goal. And I think even though it was a high school orchestra, he sort of set the stage for me to be a professional musician in working extremely hard for one particular audition, sort of the spirit of competition while also supporting one's classmates or one's colleagues.
I have a great memory of a guidance counselor who was at Heights the entire time I was there, named Mark Beal. And Mr. Beal just happened to live 4 doors away from me. So I used to babysit his boys when they were little, which really helped me for a number of occasions. When I got a little bit of trouble, I always had Mr. Beal there to help me. But one of the interesting things was he was going to graduate school at Case Western in counseling. And so he asked me if I would come in one Saturday and allow him to take all these vocational intelligence tests and things, then give me feedback on them as part of his class. So I did that. And it was just really piqued my interest in psychological measurement, which has been a meaningful part of my entire career for 40 years. So it was a little thing. I just happened to help him with a graduate class he was taking, but didn't realize at the time, but ultimately it had a tremendous impact on me.
So I actually have 2 memories. One is I took regular physics and AP physics, and he wrote his own book, which of course now not having a textbook is pretty common, but at the time it was really unusual. He had every problem was a novel problem, and you never get into books. And to this day, I still really love, even though I didn't become a physicist, I still really love physics. I worked with the image makers, which used to choose the Hall of Fame when I was in high school. To bring everyone into the school and take them to classes. And I took around 2 people, one biologist, who then gave me a book on epidemiology, which, kind of helped spark my interest in medical. The other one was Sergio Abramoff, who used to own Sergio's in Sink, and he was a chef, and he explained how he could taste all the different food. And so that was really unusual, because up until that time, I had never kind of as this kind of special talent and skill where you could actually taste different things. So I'm not sure I would have heard that anywhere else, but that was like really striking to me at the time.
So like others, my favorite memories come from classroom experiences, whether it was in Miss McBride's AP English, kind of getting exposure to world literature, which I fell in love with, or I think about Mr. Geiger, who I took a creative writing class, like as an elective as a senior, and he saw something in me as a writer and as a speaker that I did not see in myself. But now today I tap into that ability quite often. And then my favorite memory being with Deborah Turner in Street Law, where she just demonstrated such an investment in her students. And we had a good time in there, and people would clown and be silly, and she would handle all of that and yet do it with love. And I knew too that she was taking courses in law school and raising a son with special needs. And she inspired me in a lot of ways, like my own mother, while teaching us some really important information around our legal rights, our constitutional rights as citizens that today feels very proximate given some of our realities.
I can't recite a specific memory about Heights, but I will say this, that I used to just love going to school there because every day was unique. And the ecosystem of Heights High School was so rich. It was just rich. You'd go there and there was all these amazing things going on and different people, you know, in the orchestra or theater or the jocks or whatever, people excelling in various endeavors. And I just, maybe I learned how to network because of Heights. You know, I go around and just talk to different groups of people and, hey, what's up and how you doing? And I think that really instilled in me some social skills that have served me well as an entrepreneur through my life. But yeah, I was just happy to go to school every day there. It was fantastic.
Jim, that is such a, everyone said something, right? I think we got everyone. That's such a good way to end that question, because I always say I grew up at Heights. Like, I didn't grow up at,
Yeah.
at Heights. Like, that's where I learned everything. My peer group is still one of my best. They're all my best friends. Like, it was just such a ecosystem, I guess is the perfect word. And I really appreciate that. All of you guys, like, it's a unique place that, you know, it's like, oh, I went to Heights. You're like, oh, okay, you're cool. All right, I got you. We're from the same kind of place. So Steve, I know you have one final question.
Yeah, and some of you touched on it, but several of you have mentioned a teacher or coach that said the right words at the right time. Give a shout out to someone who made an impact on you.
So I'm going to reflect back again on Deborah Turner, who, yes, she cared about us as scholars, as students at Heights, but there was this incident where a young man seemed to be maybe taking advantage of two young women. One of them was me, admittedly. Nothing extreme, nothing too provocative. However, she saw what was happening. She knew what was happening with some notes being passed and such. And she stepped into that space with myself, with the other young woman. And she like just gave us some wise advice that helped us both, I think, to really create some real important boundaries in that moment that helped to keep us safer in the situation and just socially safer. So I really, again, appreciated the level of care that she showed us as, again, students in her class, but also as people and young adults, most importantly.
I would like to give a shout out to there's a few people. One would be my art teacher at the time, which was Barbara Baker / Townsend. She's back to Barbara Townsend now. She was my art teacher at the time, and just for her support and believing in me. And then I had like 3 coaches coming up that were very unique. I would say Richard Mann, who was the track coach, and Jacob Bentley, who were also was assistant track coach at the time. I had him over at Roxborough as well as at Heights. And one other unique coach that probably everybody didn't have was I had Steve Harvey, the comedian, was my basketball coach at Roxborough Middle School, or Roxborough Junior High at the time. Those were some of my people that I think inspired me.
So I liked all of my science teachers at Heights, Miss Kalo, Miss Hellman, Mr. Quayle, and then Mr. Vargas, who did BC calculus. And I think the calculus teacher was probably my favorite because I actually never really liked math up to that point. And calculus was so much fun, which is a funny thing to say, but I always say it's like the most fun math there is. And I think it's in part because, you know, all the time he put in, and, you know, we used to do, like, it was the only time I did tons of homework and I didn't care. Like, I just loved doing it. And so, you know, I would just say that that really had a huge influence on me, even though I can't say like a particular moment, but just the fact that they held us to a really high standard and they provided us a lot of really great educational opportunity.
I love what you said about, you weren't such a fan of math. It reminded me also of one of my favorite teachers, who was Mr. Wessels. And he was just so passionate about math. And I didn't particularly think I liked math, but I loved math that year. And it makes me realize how a great teacher can really make you fall in love with anything if they're passionate. I find the same today. If you go to a museum and there's an incredible curator, you fall in love with that particular subject. And I think I mentioned already Dr. Mayer and Dr. Rubinski, who I thought were both extremely passionate about what they did and cared so much.
I gave a shout out to Mort Beal before, and there's also another teacher. I think I'm not sure his name. I think his name was Mr. Johnson, but I was taking a course called, I think it's called Social Relations, and it happened to be during a presidential election cycle. And we started talking about politics. And I just happened to ask a question. It was LBJ versus Barry Goldwater. Again, I'm dating myself, but I think most of you know who those people are. Okay, but I just happened to ask a simple question. I said, who do you think is going to win the presidential election? And he started talking about how difficult it is to beat an incumbent. And he believed that Johnson was going to win just because he was in office and he was an incumbent. And it sort of got me interested in politics. And for some reason, I kept that interest in politics. I got interested in leadership, and that became my area of research. And to this day, I do research on leadership and arrogance. That's what I've done over the last decade. So again, it was a little thing that ended up being important to me, and I didn't realize at the time.
I'm going to give a shout out to so many of the teachers in the English department. And there wasn't anything, not a particular memory, but so many of them saw something in me that I definitely didn't see in myself at that time. I know that that's been said before. And part of it is to enjoy keeping going on it and working through an issue, which is something that is so much a part of my professional life. So Mrs. Rubinski, Mrs. Branham for the existential philosophy course that just completely, I went into college as a philosophy major because of her, and Mrs. Lefferts, all of those AP English classes that were offered that year. So shout out to that strong department.
Yeah, I had so many great teachers at Heights. I'm very grateful. So many, passionate people that really valued excellence. But I think the teachers that had the most impact on me were the two instrumental music teachers, Mr. Bain and Mr. Bergantino. And they had very different personalities, but they both had very high standards. They really fostered this community in the band and the orchestra and the jazz band and the marching band that really brought out the best in all the kids, myself included. And they saw in me potential that I didn't know I had, and nurtured me, gave me encouragement. And I think that made a big difference for me.
I had two sort of standout academic experiences that other people's comments reminded me of. And one was, I don't know the teacher's name, but I took calculus as a senior. And I think that for me was like it opened up a world to me of intellectual math development that I hadn't realized before. It just like opened up this whole thing. And so that was really interesting. And then I had a history teacher, Mr. Lasky, I think his name was, and where he was so profound in his engagement, when we would discuss historical passages that we had read or whatever in class, he could kind of steer you through the conversation and get you to really dig a little bit deeper in terms of your intellectual pursuit of a subject, and he wouldn't be satisfied with a single sentence answer. He would make you explore it more deeply and open up some of the possibilities of your thinking. And that was, both of those were really had a profound impact on me. And I remember that. Yeah, thank you.
I'll give my shout out to Mr. Young, Steve Young, who was tennis coach for 4 years and who had a lot of success with, had a couple of failures with, and throughout all of it, I don't even know if he knows that he did this, but he really helped teach me the importance of mental strength and mental fortitude and grinding through things and dealing with success and dealing with failure and being mentally strong throughout all of it.
Right. Did everyone get a chance to speak? Make sure I didn't miss anyone. All right. Well, before I turn it over to Deanna, just really quickly, Jerome, something you said about Prince and the Revolution and Sean Riley, who a name I haven't heard in forever, but just a quick story. It was a talent show my freshman year, and I was working backstage or something, and he had just finished singing Moonshadow by Cat Stevens. I'll never forget. He walks by me. I forgot what the exchange was, but he said, "Life is an open book. Make sure you choose each chapter wisely." And he like tipped his hat over his eye and walked away. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. When I was a freshman, I was like, "Man." So if you still keep in touch with him, please tell him I said hello.
Okay, will do.
And with that, I'll pass it back to Deanna.
Okay. All right. Well, these are really some great stories. This has been so much fun. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a real honor to get to know you a little bit better and hear about your experiences at Heights and about what made Heights such a special place for you. I'm proud to be able to get a chance to introduce you to our students, to our faculty, to our alumni, and to the greater community. So thanks again for taking the time to talk with us this evening. For those of you who are at home and watching, you can find all of the details about this year's inductees and those from previous years at our website, heightsschoolsfoundation.org. So good night, everyone.
Congratulations.
Bye, everyone.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks again.